Gerald is a producer, engineer, mixer. He's worked with a lot of big names in hip hop and rap, and I was just thrilled when I got to meet him. Being based in Atlanta, he spends a lot of time in Atlanta, which I'll tell you about in just a minute. I'm not going to try to do him justice running through his career. I'll let him tell you about it. It would be more interesting anyways. So if you can, please give him a warm welcome, and let's get him up here.
I'm not ludicrous, so I'm not gonna rap. Okay. Hello, everybody. Real quick question. How many of you guys are music people? How many people are video people? How many are both? Music people. Okay. Video people. Both. Excellent. Alright. I'm not gonna stand by the computer real quick. I just want to be over here. I like to sit down, basically feel comfortable. Can everybody see me? Yeah. Okay, cool. Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So to give you guys some background, I'm from Sacramento, California initially. I got my start at about 14 working in live sound for my church. I told my dad I wanted to be a rapper. He was like, no, you're gonna go to church and you're going to do AV. So I'm originally an audio and visual guy. I moved to Atlanta in 2010, and I started my career as an audio engineer working under Brian Michael Cox, a lot of different major producers. So Brian Michael Cox produced like Mariah Carey's We Belong Together, Usher Let It Burn, a lot of huge, like a 14-time Grammy Award winner. And so I worked for his publishing company, literally working for all of the artists and writers under his company and doing it for free. I was 22 maybe, the most. So for me, everything today is gonna be more on philosophy. I'm gonna get a little technical just for like a cool visual aspect, but I'm big on philosophy. I'm 31 now, I started at 14. So there's a lot of things that I've learned that when I started teaching were important and valuable to my students, from high school level to college level to now I mentor people, that are doing this for real and making money from it. So thank you to Avid for having me, because this is a really cool thing for me to have used Pro Tools my entire life, and now I'm speaking and talking to all you cool people. So first, give yourself a round of applause, because you guys are in control of other people's lives, so that's a very important job. It's a very important job. More importantly, you guys are in charge of other people's dreams. You guys kind of get that? Like most of the people that choose to do this, because it's a choice, most of them start as dreamers, and then we learn the technical aspect. Somewhere in learning the technical aspect, we lose the dream, and then we become extra nerdy. And then if you're lucky enough, you get to a point where you live in the balance of technical and the dream part, So I will go ahead and jump into this. So, like Brian was saying, Ludacris is probably the most famous person that people know me for working with, but I work with everybody from Justin Bieber to this artist like Black Youngsters like Brian Michael Cox, Jermaine Dupri. There's a few different type of people that I've never been in the studio with, but I've touched the records. So technically, I just put them on my credit list, you know what I mean? If you work on it, you credit it. So, with my handy dandy notes, I have notes for you guys. All right. So my first point that I want to talk to, how many of you guys are instructors? Okay. I'm not sure what the other people are, but I'm going to talk to the instructors today. And everybody else kind of just take the information for what it is. So the first point I wanted to hit was, to stop being nervous. That's a very serious point that I wish somebody would have told me. But there's a better way to say it. Stop being scared. Being nervous is like the indicator that you're doing the right thing, right? Like you're like on the path to something really cool. And so being in control of young people, or just people that are coming to you for advice and help, it's very important to make them understand that they're not supposed to know everything tomorrow. And that's a big block for a lot of students a lot of people coming into the industry is that because they don't have the information yet to be able to manufacture the results they want, they are very hard on themselves. And what can happen is you block your creativity. One thing that I used to always tell my students is that when you're working in a professional environment, you are there to serve. You're there to get in where you fit in. You're not supposed to be the most genius person. But as an engineer, we're looked at as if something goes wrong, that person has to fix it. And so one thing I tell people to tell their students is tell people don't be scared to not know something, because you always have the opportunity to figure it out with our smartphones, with laptops, everything. Who Googles everything? Now, who's addicted to Google? Like, I randomly Google stuff. If I had a thought, I'd Google it just to see, because I want to have that conversation, And that's a very, very important thing to have, is that understanding that, eventually we get to a point where we know a lot more than we knew before. And that's a great place to be. But in that journey, there's a lot of magic that happens. And a lot of young people, or just people like that, people that want to get into this world, being hypercritical about the unknown, it blocks you being able to put yourself out there as much as possible, personality-wise, creating a vibe in the studio, which obviously the vibe is everything, right? Yeah, studio people? Okay, cool, thank you. All right, so my next topic is understanding your tools. Now I'm gonna sit down on this one because this is very, very, very deep for me. I was that student when I first got into audio in my community college that I got on Pro Tools 8, and I wanted to know every single plugin, how it worked. When I found Waves plugins, I was like, oh, I didn't even know what half those plugins did. But the idea of new toys and new technology made me want to just explore these things. And so I got overwhelmed with information because, a compressor's going to compress, an equalizer's going to, cut frequencies, boost frequencies, a reverb is going to create space. But there's so many choices and options that we have that we can easily get overwhelmed. And so what I try to tell students is know your basic tools first before you drive and jump into UAD plugins. Know what the basic EQ does in Pro Tools. The EQ3, the EQ7, these things are very, very powerful, but we get so caught up in consumerism. That's what I like to call it, consumerism. You see a new plugin, you get an email for a new plugin, and spend money, and it's like you're spending money to go further away from what you need to be learning. And that's the basics, because audio engineering itself is not a technological situation, it's more of a philosophical vibe, kind of creative, like mixing, Michael Jackson's album wasn't mixed, Thriller wasn't mixed with Waves plugins, it wasn't mixed with UAD plugins, it was mixed with a console and genius people in the room. And so what I try to tell people is that think about that first. Think about what you can do with the information that you have and the tools that you have. And so, telling your young people to don't go out and buy the Waves plugins. Don't tell them to go out and buy all these extra things that they need. Tell them to learn the basics first. And then once they learn the basics, now you can say, okay, I understand what an EQ is, so I can go and get the EQ from Waves so I can understand what I'm hearing when I compare it to the stock plugins. Because I've seen people make hits with no plugins. Think about that, no processing, but they understand tracking, mic positioning. They understand what it is from an aesthetic standpoint is to be an engineer or producer. Now, how many music people are engineer producers in here? Okay, a few. So, tell me if you feel this. When you first got into the industry, actually, raise your hand again. Okay, you guys are kind of all in the same age group, so I hope nobody takes this offense. But in the good old days of just making it happen, I know, I'm being very dangerous right now. In the good old days of audio engineering, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't the tools, it was what you need to get done with the people around you, correct? And so I think you guys should always push that to your young people, because a 21-year-old now coming into audio world is a consumer-based audio engineer, not a technical or emotional or a creative. They're just people that say, okay, here's cool things that'll get me from point A to point Z very fast, but they don't understand how they even got there. And that's a scary thing, because if they go into another situation or another scenario, which we all know, a lot of sessions, every gig is different. That's the beautiful thing about what we do, is that you could be working with the same artist for a week, and most of the time you're going to be doing something different every day. And if you know the basic principles of how to manipulate audio, how to be able to get it to an emotional value, you'll never, go wrong. Because if the computer shuts down and all you have is somebody's old computer in the studio running old plugins, you still have to get the job done, because that time is paid for, or that deposit is made, all those different things. So yeah, that's all I got on that one. And I'll open up for discussion as I get like halfway through. So, okay, practice. Before I did music, I was somewhat of an athlete. I was more of a passionate athlete as opposed to a talented athlete, if that makes sense. And so, being in that world, the one thing that I can tie to what we do is repetition. When we sit down in front of our computers, or we sit down in front of a console, or we sit down in front of anything that we are in charge of manipulating for a certain result, the only way that you're able to be faster is through repetition. And with young people, I keep saying young people like I'm super old. I just have like a lot of gray hair, so it just throws me off sometimes in my head. So a 21-year-old coming into this, they want instant results. They want to sound like the guys on the radio. That's cool that it's possible a lot faster now, because I appreciated knowing the tools, but not knowing how to get where you want to go every single time is kind of scary, because you're going to put a lot of people into a position where they're wasting money, or you're wasting your time, they're wasting their time. And so I always tell people, don't spend so much time buying things, but practicing with what you have. If they get, a Pro Tools bundle, practice with the plugins that come with the Pro Tools bundle. Don't go out and buy the Waves and all this, and Waves and them would probably kill me because I've done some stuff with them, but I'm just so adamant about the young people coming into this industry really understanding what it takes to be a good professional, not just a professional, because you can get paid for it, now you're a professional, but when you are able to understand and communicate, because half of our job is taking people's general layman words and having to translate them into these technical realms, right? Like when somebody's like, make it beefier. We're not cooking food. But in our world, that translates into more low end, right? But it takes repetition to understand those things. And so one thing that you guys, I can leave with you guys is that when you go back and speak to your students, have them understand the necessity of repetition, meaning that work on one mix 5 times, and then guarantee they're going to get a different result every single time, so that they understand how certain things work against, how certain things don't work, why this plugin is better than this plugin, why this color on this plugin is a little bit better than this plugin. And I have a cool little template that I'm going to show you guys eventually. That's why we're getting our technical difficulties together. Alright. Understanding what producing and engineering is. Now, like I said before, engineering and producing is technical, but more so the dream that we all have is to be able to hear something that we created in the world, right? To see it in the world. And so, by us meeting's off on time. Okay. So, one of my pet peeves with a lot of the people I mentor is they're always in a comparison state. They're always trying to make something that's similar or exactly the same as what's already out there in the world. Producing, and this is really my opinion of producing is being able to take people that have never met or people that may have not been in a collaborative state and putting them together to produce a tangible product. And so producing, video, producing audio, same thing, same concept. It still is a team basis. It still has to be some person that's in charge of this, some person that's in charge of that, and knowing those concepts. Technology doesn't play a part into producing and engineering. There are tools that help you do that, but producing and audio engineering itself is actually being in the room, being present, being coherent, understanding people, knowing how to get people to communicate better with each other. A lot of my job is communication. I spend maybe 30% of my time doing technical work. I'm a fast engineer, so tracking vocals and all that stuff, I can do it like that. But most of my time is communicating with people so that we get the best performances from these artists. When I work with Chris generally, he's a funny guy, he's a great guy, and so before he, comes in and delivers his verses, we have conversations. He'll have written already, but the conversation piece that we have allows him to have the energy and the spirit that when he goes in the booth, he knocks it out really fast. He's a legend, so it's really quick. But in my experience working with unsigned artists, independent artists, trying to make it, a lot of what they need is a therapist, Seriously, like they need somebody that they can, spill on. I always say that the studio is a sanctuary. It's a place that people want to go and feel comfortable and just be vulnerable. And if you're the person in charge, meaning the person in the seat, regardless if you're the lowest paid person in the room, if you control what goes in and out, into the computer or into, tape machine, whatever, and out the speakers, you're in charge. Because guess what? If something messes up, who are they going to blame? Right. So, telling young people the technical part is cool, you'll learn it. It's YouTube, you'll learn everything that you know, everything that you need to know. But the thing that's not taught is how to create an environment for the people, the artists, the songwriters, the musicians, so that these people feel comfortable enough to be their best. Because the best comes out when people are just freely doing something. When I go in as a producer and I have musicians, I have an idea. I don't ever come in with like a hard set plan saying this is what I want to do, It's just not my style. Because I want people to be the best of them, And so if I have a guitar player that is amazing with playing leads, but he sucks at just locking in chords to the click, I'm going to let him get about 30 minutes of lead off and then tell him, hey, okay, we now need to focus on making a record, because now they're expressive, they've gotten that out, it's in the universe now. But, when they can't just do chords to a click, just please just lock in, and I have to edit, and that's where the technical comes in. We can just edit things to make things right. But when you get those mistakes that turn into magic, that's what we're doing it for, And as an engineer, it's nothing better than capturing everything, and then somebody coming to you like, man, I wish I had that tape from 5 takes ago. And you're like, oh yeah, I got it right here. And they're like, oh, because they had no idea how they were going to replicate that feeling in that vibe, because it's, it's divine. It's not something that you can just do every single time. So definitely communicate that of what engineering or what producing is. To me, being a mix engineer is just using those faders and those tools to create an emotion. That's it. It's as simple as that. It's not overly technical. It doesn't take 15 plugins on one instrument. If it does, it does. But overall, a lot of times we're just in our heads thinking about how to make something better when something was already good, Cool. So next, speed is your friend. Yes. When I first started, I was the slowest engineer ever. I mean, I've gotten kicked out of so many sessions. Like honestly, my first 3 years of engineering for artists, I was in my hometown. I was doing it for free or for a little bit of money, so people would just be like, yeah, that's cool. But then when I got with the big boys, my first session, within 15 minutes, get off the chair. No, you are going too slow. You should have moved that vocal already. It should have been moved so I can cut the next one. You're killing the vibe. Get up. And then when you see the artists recording themselves, it does something to your soul. It really does. Because it makes you, it's going to do two things. It's going to make you say, this isn't for me, or I just got to get better. Luckily I said I got to get better because I didn't really have a choice. I was stuck in Atlanta. So, 3,000 miles away from home is not a place where you want to just give up. And so, speed is something that I really took into account, but there was nobody to tell me what that actually meant or how to be faster. People always said, learn your key commands, learn your key commands. I took Pro Tools 101, I took 110, a lot of stuff early in community college, but nobody ever said, hey, when you're tracking, you need to be understanding that the artist is already thinking of the next thing. So you need to have things set up in a template so that when you cut this vocal, you're cutting backgrounds, while they're cutting the next vocal, and this is why I love Pro Tools, because while we're cutting that vocal, I'm recording over the vocal that we just cut, but I'm able to grab it, move it down to a track while something's tracking. And so where normally in a session, it would take me, for a 3-part harmony with the artist that actually can just knock it out, it would take me 10 minutes because of the pace of how I was moving. I would cut it, stop the track, move it, okay, record it. That little small window accumulated is a lot of time. And so now when I can do a 3-part harmony in less than 5 minutes, and they're like, oh, they're waiting, I'm waiting for them. And that was the point where I understood that's what makes people want to hire you over and over and over again. And so key commands are very, very important. Knowing every key command, I personally don't feel is very important. Know the key commands that allow you to best serve your client. Because the thing about information is that it's hard for us as humans to filter what information is important once we absorb so much. And I was that guy. I was very technical. I knew all the vocab and everything about being an engineer when I got into the big leagues. Didn't matter. Nobody cared that I knew what these words were. All they cared about was, can you get the job done as fast as possible and with great quality? And so once I started dialing back my information and only using the things that I needed to know, the nerd in me would still be, up late at night researching all this stuff and researching all the coolest tools. That way when I get in front of my peers, we're talking shop talk and you're like, yo, you use 1176? Oh man, that's perfect, but I use a 2-tech CL1B and all that kind of cool stuff. But to an artist, if you say a CL1B, they're gonna be like, huh? What? So understanding your tools, going back to that, understanding how to use your tools in the context of the room that you're in. Because you don't always need to know every single key command for every single session. Some sessions are very simple tracking vocals. Some sessions I'm cutting a whole band. Some I'm doing an orchestra for the TV stuff that I've done. It doesn't matter, you just gotta do it fast, and whatever that means for the moment. So speed is definitely your friend. One of my instructors told me in community college, the way LA works is if you can do the job cheaper and faster, you'll always get hired. And like that sticks with me to this day. So I always try to be the fastest guy in the room. All right. And then I'll open this up for like a Q&A in a second. Controlling the artist. This goes back to the guitar player that does leads all day. It's crazy doing amazing leads, but can't play chords to a click to save his life. If you're in that chair, you are in charge. Like I said, it doesn't matter your level of experience. It's your job to communicate what the objective is. If people tend to forget, because I've come to the realization that artists just like to hear themselves on microphones sometimes. You know what I mean? It's not a thing where they might come in with trying to make a song, but then they start hearing themselves with effects and reverbs, and it's all clean, it's all polished, and now they just want to sing runs, and they just want to do crazy part harmonies, but we're not getting a song done. And that's the biggest thing. I'm always for the song. I protect the song. If somebody comes in and says, hey, I have the song I wrote, or I want to write a song, it's my job as the person that controls what goes in and what goes out to direct that person. Not even from being a producer standpoint, but from being the person responsible for what they leave with. You know, take the title away, producer, engineer, the person that is responsible for this artist or this, you know, whoever it is to come in and leave with a product that they feel proud about. And you have to put yourself in the position of, you can't be afraid to tell the truth. That's the one thing that I was nervous about early in my career. I'd be in a room and everybody's just hanging, smoking, doing whatever, and I felt inadequate because I didn't have the time put in, or I didn't, you know, get the validation, or whatever it may have been. I didn't have those things to make me feel like, okay, I can tell this guy who just paid $1,200 just pulled up in the bins and, you know, hey, you're smoking a little too much, we need to get the song done. But then after a while, you start realizing you're wasting your time. You could be working with somebody more serious. You could be practicing. You could be doing anything other. I like to play video games. I'm an NBA 2K fanatic. So when I'm in the studio with artists that are wasting my time, guess what? I'm so mad that I'm not playing 2K. And so I get an attitude with the artist in a nice way. But I just communicate to them that we are here for a purpose. We have a small allotted amount of time, and we need to accomplish a goal. So if we can't accomplish that goal, what are we really doing? I had an artist, he's 18 in Atlanta, he's starting to work himself into the rankers of our system. And he comes from the generation of, you know, they don't really use pens and paper anymore to write lyrics. They just get in front of the microphone, you know, throw the 2-track up, and then they figure it out. And I have to sit there and playlist every single one of their melody ideas and then try to comp it together to make some sense of it so that they know what they're doing. But the kid just kept singing random notes. I'm like, bro, are we gonna get any words anytime soon? So after about 10 minutes, I just stop it. His managers are in the room, everybody's in the room. I just stop it. I turn around and look at him. I'm like, look, what are we doing? Seriously, are we here to make a song? Or are we here to just hear you sing? Because at the end of the day, if we're not intentionally trying to make a song, and that's a big word, intent. Everybody has to be on the same page of intent. The moment that the person who's communicating the message, generally the artist, as soon as they lose that, everybody else in the room is lost. I've seen it so many times. The producer just starts doing his own thing. We all have phones now, so everybody gets on their phone on Instagram and Twitter, and it's like, no, we're not here for nothing right now. So what I had to tell him was, hey, look, when we go in there, I need you to start saying some words. Doesn't matter what words you say. You can say squirrel, ass, whatever you want to say. Just say something. I don't want to keep hearing you sing. So after 6 hours, we got a song done. But it was a lesson to where the management came to me afterwards, And they said, man, thank you so much. Because nobody gets him out of his comfort zone. He always just goes in and does that for as long, and nobody says anything. And it blew my mind that this kid has so many records, nobody tells him that? Because everybody's scared to be like the bad guy in the room, right? But if it's your job to make sure everything comes out good, you have to be. You have to protect the song. People's feelings don't matter in the studio. Obviously, if you can figure out a way to communicate to protect their feelings so that they're not destroyed, cool. I have this thing where I do step up and step back. Where if somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do, I'll step up and communicate it, but then I step back and allow them to try to do what I'm asking them to do. And then I just congratulate them on doing that. Yeah, man, that was a great tape. Let's do it again. Man, that melody that you have, if you can keep that melody, you know what? I'll cut it up for you, listen to it a couple times, keep that part of the melody. All right, now finish the melody, finish the theme, finish the motif, Then we can get into backgrounds and we can get into all that cool stuff. And then now there's a respect for what we are doing, you know what I mean? So management came to me and said, man, nobody's ever made him get a song done in a day. And it was because I had to be the bad guy. Because the kid was discouraged. He was super discouraged when I talked to him, for sure. Because it was actually my beat that he was singing over. So I was really pissed. I was just like, man, I could be using this for something else, but now I'm here doing this with you. And so he tried to be like, after I had that conversation when he goes back in the booth, he's like, I don't know, man, maybe I'm just not feeling the beat. Man, this beat's fire, you're tripping. This beat's fire. I played a lot of beats and you picked this beat. So it's definitely not the beat. But that's in my head, I said that, That's in my head. I definitely communicate, the way I communicate it, just so that you guys have a better example, is, okay, if you want, we can change the beat. I just feel like changing the beat won't change the situation that we have of you not being able to figure out words. It's just confrontation, right? Confrontation is inevitable, war is optional. So we could have went back and forth about it, but I say my piece, go back in the booth, let's try it out for another 5 minutes. 6 hours later, we have a song. His managers are always coming to me, hey, can we get the song? Hey, no, y'all haven't paid me yet, but that's another conversation. But most importantly, if you start teaching your students that concept of taking charge in the studio, that'll help them grow in their career, because people want leaders. When you're in that room, nobody wants to be around the engineer that's just the hunchback engineer and is like, yeah, I'll just press 3 and record you and everything and make it sound good. It's cool, but what they need is somebody that's invested in the product. Because taking their feelings aside, the product's the only thing that matters. When you go out into the world and you press play, nobody cares how long it took. Nobody cares who did what. All they care about when they listen is, do they feel something when they listen to it? So you gotta protect that and teach these young people how to protect that thing. I got 10 minutes, okay. All right, and I think actually it's my last point. Yep, show template. All right, cool. So I was getting this weird error before, but hopefully it's not. Oh, no, maybe that's error message. Okay. What is it? Why are you doing this? Oh, yeah. Oh, I said, not giving me the built-in option. Which is really weird. I just got this Mac like a month ago. But it should N is in Nancy.
Yeah. Keys? Yes, sir. Do you need audio title?
No, actually. I'm just gonna show the setup. Perfect. Yo, thank you. Because, I've had this, and I get so frustrated when certain things like this happen, and I have to sit there and Google and everything, and I figure it out, and I forget. Okay, so these are templates. I'm big on templates. The moment I found out that, hey, you should have a set it and forget it situation, I was like, heaven has spoke to me. So, these are different templates, like Travis Scott, he just dropped it on the other day, like a lot of different people, Busta Rhymes. These are all templates from me recording them at different studios, Conway, and all these other places. And so, the one that I'm currently using a lot right now is this one called Key Sauce. So I definitely have all the sauce. So, damn it. Why is it getting errors? Come on, please. Okay, let me put this something different. Oh, because it's looking for the wrong place to put it. Oh my god. Didn't even do that, son. FL Studio wants to take over my screen. What was that? Somebody give me a suggestion?
Looked like when you were trying to save it, save it in that location, so it looked on your mouth for the location.
Alright, let's hope this works. Yes, I think so. Yes. Who did that? Give him something. You guys give him something. Not just a round of applause. I'm talking about Avid, give him something. A t-shirt or something. Okay, cool. Okay, so my template, I'll go from the edit window. So does this look a little overly complicated to anybody? Or is this kind of familiar? Okay, perfect. So at the top, it's where I have the 2-track, somebody gives me a beat, I throw it in there. I keep it at -5 just to, keep my headroom. I need my headroom. I live for headroom. My mic input, so as you see right here, I actually have things that I print. I come from like an analog world. Like I said, 30 when I started. I started in 03, and I love sonic characteristics. So I have things like the SSL from UAD or the SSL from Waves if there's no UAD around. I use a lot of the Slate stuff now, and so I do that with giving me a little bit more headroom going into my actual track that I printed on. So now I use this as my overall base. This track is used more than any other track in this whole thing, because what I do is, as I'm cutting, I can now place them into the audio playback spots. And these playback spots these tracks are now routed to, so it's already here, yeah. So these are routed to the respective auxiliary channels. So everybody kind of gets that, right? Everybody's like, okay, cool. And so what this allows me to do is that when I cut a vocal, people are already hearing my compression, EQ, so I have chorus for the sing aux. I use the CL, I love the Chris Lord Algae plugin because it allows me to not have to dial in so heavy, but more kind of get a general feel. And they did a really good, algorithm that puts this thing together. And so I use this, which has reverb and delay on it, to just give me an extra little oomph. My EQ settings, just cutting out low end, cutting out low mids, and boosting everything in the presence. Giving people that, giving people like a fake mix. You know what I mean? Because nowadays you have to build the vibe. You cannot just be tracking dry. I'm a firm believer of not tracking dry. Unless the artist specifically says, I want to track my vocals dry, do never put a dry vocal through Pro Tools. It's 2018. We gotta just, be there with what we're doing. And then a de-esser, obviously, because I'm boosting so much high, I just want to be able to have something to control the sibilants. And then this is my baby right here. This is C4. I just use it to be able to control the spectrum of the vocal in general. And give it, like I said, because I'm taking so much away from this. If you know about the C4, you understand what the compression is doing. But I'm just bringing it a little bit back. And then I have my auxiliary synths. And then this is really like a trick. This is what made Chris hire me. So, my rap vocal tracks. This EQ setting. Come on, friend. Alright. So, we're big into audio effects and all that stuff like that. This EQ is just a filter. Because nowadays in hip hop, filters and delay throws and all that stuff are so huge. And so when I cut a vocal, if I need to make that vocal delay or something in that one section, instead of doing a send and all this stuff like that and throwing that's too long. It takes too long. I don't like that. I literally just take that, copy it down to the next track, turn those things on. Now I got the same effect, 10 times faster. I can cut a vocal, make it sound mixed in less than 5 minutes because everything's already set up for me to win. So preparation, I would say, is going to be the obviously number one important thing to start off. And then from here, I just manipulate it based on the session. You know what I mean? It's set up to do the same thing every session, but as the artists change, as the scenarios change, people add vocals, people's tones change, you just different microphones, you just tweak according to the song. And that is pretty much it. We have about 2 minutes. I'm pretty sure they'll give me 5 minutes to have questions and answers. I'm just gonna assume that. So yeah, that's my template. Can we do a Q&A? Just for a quick second. Okay, cool. Any questions? I mean, if not, it's cool. Yes.
What artists do you just, in hip hop, do you just really look up to for production?
Okay, so hip hop producers or just artists that I want to produce?
Yeah, or songs that you're this is masterfully produced, I love.
Anything that Timbaland does, and Pharrell, those guys to me are the ultimate.
Say again, do it
Timbaland and Pharrell. So Timbaland did Timbaland and Pharrell actually did a lot of the Justin Timberlake stuff. Definitely Google Timbaland. Anything, because his programming style and the way that they mix. I mean, he uses his old school engineer Jimmy Douglas, who worked on all the Jodeci records and just worked on a lot of Atlantic records, and a lot of these older guys, they have the old OGs around them. As artists, I love working with Chris because Chris, when I was 14, he dropped his first album, and I've been a fan ever since. So it's definitely a dream to be working with somebody, so close. I live with him, which is crazy. His house is crazy. And then Jay-Z's on my top list. I definitely want to work with him, and every young guru who's his engineer is somebody that I look up to. I've always looked up to. And actually, when I met him, I got more fanned out about that than I've ever being around these celebrities and working with all these cool people. It's just because it's to see somebody that does what I do at the highest level, yeah, it's crazy. I would say Pharrell and Timbaland. I'm a West Coast guy, so I can name off a bunch of West Coast guys, but I'm just speaking more in commercial terms. Terrace Martin, you should check him out. That's a West Coast guy I have to announce, because he's Dr. Dre and every producer wrapped into one. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a question about your track engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to see if I can get a few quick things from you, Mr. Fast.
Yeah.
When you're tracking there, your vocals done, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And you heard some stuff, so you're gonna take. Do you quickly bump it down, do the track? What's
Yes.
after you
Duplicate all day. That's my thing. So I have 4 here because I playlist a lot. So if the artist is cutting vocals and certain things are overlapping for speed purposes, I'll cut a vocal, it goes right here, and then I'll cut a vocal, it ends up right here, I'll move it down, continue the cut. Because a lot of hip hop artists nowadays, they're not writing. They're in the booth saying everything line by line, and they need it to be fast. So as I'm cutting this, move it down. All right, say the next line. Move it down to this. Move it down. And as I'm moving it down and they're figuring out their words, every time they stop, I'm literally A-S, cutting and trimming, cutting and trimming, cutting and trimming. That way, when it's fully, it's done, it's clean. It sounds polished. They're not hearing the, all the little room noises and stuff like that. Because all those little noises accumulated really make a difference in how clean something can be. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. I was more wondering how you go about, multiple takes of the stuff, because that line, you got 4 takes of the same line, are you muting, bumping down?
Oh, no. I'm playlisting 100%. I mean, I cut a vocal. If it'll do it right now. No, okay. Cutting the vocal. And if they're doing the same line over and over, stop it. Boom. While I'm recording, I have it muted.
Got it.
See?
Okay.
Yeah. And that way, I have organization. And then I'll label that, say, okay, this.
Yeah, because they want to go back and take 3 and use word from that and take 4.
Exactly. I do that all the time. And then just to take it a step further, I'll use 2 tracks to playlist different sections, and I'll only use those 2 tracks. So by the time we get done, it's time for me to comp. Those 2 tracks will have a lot of, all the pieces for the whole song, and they'll be in different parts, but at least they're on 2 tracks. So I can easily identify. They say, I want to go to this line, but I want to do take 5 of this line, but I want to take the word this from take 7. I can easily identify it very fast to where it's not a holdup, while I'm comping. Because I generally like to comp while I'm cutting, if I can, if the artist gives me that liberty. Cool. Anybody else?
We probably have time for one more.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Everybody else does. So, your education, you said you went to community college, I think, in Sacramento?
Yes.
What school did you go to?
Sacramento City College. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dope. So John Altman was my,
A lot of us know John.
yes, legendary guy. He's the person that made me believe I could do this for real.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great to hear. So, did you do any education after junior college?
I went to Art Institute. That was my reason to get to Atlanta. But when I started working with Beat Cox, I was at night going to the studio working with major people, and then in the daytime going and learning things that I already learned. So I dropped out. Yeah, I dropped out my first year. I just couldn't do it because I was learning from experience and from people that I looked up to. So when I would go in and people knew who I'm working with, these seniors are coming to me, hey, can you help me with this? That's when I knew I was in trouble. I was like, I'm not going to do $70,000 worth of debt for people that are supposed to be hired and me come ask me questions. Yeah. Cool. That's great. We definitely got to talk. Yeah. All right, so I think that's it for me. Thank you guys. You guys have been great. Good choice.